welcome back. Today we'll be looking at AWS Cloud Development Kit, also commonly referred to as AWS CDK. So CDK is another one of infrastructure as code, also called ISE tools. What CDK helps us with is defining our AWS resources through code. So you might have heard of something like Terraform, which is cloud developer agnostic. So you can create AWS, Azure, Google Cloud resources using Terraform, right? But the problem or the special gotcha with Terraform is that it has its own syntax. So as a developer, it's not really intuitive and you have to learn its syntax to be able to create a Lambda function using Terraform scripts. CDK, on the other hand, because it is so focused on AWS, it provides different language bindings that you can use to create AWS resources through code directly without having to learn any other language. So if you prefer Python, if you use TypeScript, if you use Java, you can basically use code, write code in each of those languages to create your AWS resources. So that's the advantage of using AWS CDK. So with that, let's quickly jump right into it. For today's example, we will be looking at how do we create a Lambda function using AWS CDK. So the first thing I've gone ahead and done is created this initial TypeScript application with the cdk init app command. And the demo will be using TypeScript. So for language, I specified TypeScript, but you can also specify Python or Java or some of the other language that CDK bindings are available in. So I created this, and what it led to is this npm package with this package.json file. So as you can see in the dependencies, there is this AWS CDK library which has been added along with constructs and support, source map support, and some other dev dependencies. But before diving into like AWS CDK specifically, we want to create a Lambda function, right? That is going to be hosted at the end of the day. So let's go ahead and do that first. So I created a source folder. In that, I created this index.ts file. Let's say we create this main function, which is going to take an event. And we don't really care about what type is event of. Typically it's an AWS event, but given we are not doing anything with the event, we can just say it's unknown. And we are going to return status code 200 along with body of JSON dot stringify of a hello world object. And in addition, let's also provide some headers, which is content type is application JSON. Okay, so this all looks good. So with that, let's quickly try to run our npm. Actually, we don't have the packages installed yet. So another thing to note here is AWS or CDK command by default adds AWS CDK lib as a dependency of your project. But if you are going to be hosting your Lambda function, you don't really need AWS CDK lib to be part of that Lambda deployment itself. As far as running this Lambda or hosting this Lambda code goes, like it does not have any dependencies. So what I typically do is I change these, instead of being dependencies, to be dev dependencies. So let me also quickly go ahead and do that, because otherwise what ends up happening is these get packaged into the AWS or into the Lambda zip file or the code that we upload. So instead of just being a few KBs, it ends up being a lot of MBs, because we are also hosting the AWS library itself, which is not really required and useful for our case. So yeah, don't see any point in doing that. So, okay, now that is done. Now let's also install my favorite npm check updates package, because some of these dependencies, at least I can see TypeScript, they are out of date. So let's install npm check updates package so that we'll be able to or update our dependencies. So we'll say npm build ncu with a -u flag, right? So let's go ahead and run our ncu command. Oh, even this should have been a dev dependencies, my bad. Okay, so that should also be a dev dependency. Let's also quickly make sure we are using the right version of Node. So let's see. Oh, we are using Node 17, but the latest version that AWS Lambda supports is 14. So let's use, the latest Node 14 version, which is 14.19.1, which is also in our npm rc file. Okay, so now that we are using that version, let's remove our node modules and package log and kind of do a clean install of our dependencies. So as that is happening, let's look at some of the other things that come as a part of cdk init command. The main one is this hello world lambda. Is there a stack? Yeah, hello world lambda stack.ts that got created inside this lib folder. So what this is doing, this is basically the main place where we are going to define, oh, we need to create a lambda function and or an S3 bucket or an API gateway or all of these basically. And the other one is this bin folder that has hello world lambda.ts that is basically importing that stack from the lib folder and is going to create that stack itself. So this one we don't typically have to kind of touch or do anything. One thing I would normally recommend is this commented out line that uses cdk default account and cdk default region environment variables to figure out what is the right account and region to create your stack in. So I uncomment that out because I've set these environment variables, right? So instead of relying on AWS to determine the right account and region itself, I provide them through the environment variables. So now our dependencies are installed. Let's quickly, before kind of creating our lambda function and all that stuff, let's see if our TypeScript stuff is working according to expectation. So if I run a build command, hopefully my dist folder will have the index.js file with the main function. Oh, so as you can see, the index.js file got created but inside the source folder, which is not what we wanted. So let's quickly delete that. And that happened because we have not specified, or by default there was no output directory specified in tsconfig. So let's remove the existing dist folder and run our build command again. So this time it should work and it should just have the index.js and the index.typings file basically. Yeah, so now index.js has this main function and this is basically the lambda that we want to end up creating. So this is good. Now how do we create a lambda that uses this main function and hosts it basically? So let's go to our hello world lambda stack, right? So let's start with creating our lambda function, right? So let's start importing stuff. So we'll use our AWS Lambda. The first thing we need to import is function, right? So our let's say lambda function is going to be new function. The scope is going to be the same. For ID, let's call it hello world lambda function, and then we have to provide it some props basically, which are the properties for this function. So what are the props themselves? So let's take a look. So the first thing that we do have to provide is runtime, code, and handler. So starting with code, we have to provide the code that we do want to host, right? So let's use the code class that AWS Lambda provides and the from asset, which allows us to specify the, as you can see, either the directory or of the code bundle or a zip file that we want to upload. So we know that it basically is our dist, right? So so our directory name and then forward slash and then going up a directory to the dist. I think that is the correct location. And then the next thing is handler, which is basically index file and the main function inside of our index file. And then runtime is going to be node 14, right? So the only node runtimes are node 12 and node 14, right? So oops, not 12, 14. Okay. So now apart from that, there are some other possible optional stuff that we can specify. So let's look at what is all that. So there's a description. So let's also specify that hello world lambda function timeout is let's say we want to make it like 1 second. Sorry. Timeout, we want to make it 1 second. We don't need any environment variables really. Function name, we can provide it, that's optional too. I think it might default to something. So let's provide it a function name to hello world lambda function. Then memory size, I think 128 is default and it makes sense. We don't need anything more really. Ephemeral storage size, let's skip that. Initial policy, role, VPC, subnet, security groups, outbound, dead data queue, tracing, profiling, insights version, layers, a lot of stuff that we don't really need. Events, log retention. So we do want to, so log retention is going to be log retention dot, actually what is the, retention days. I see, okay. So let's say retention days dot 3 days. So 3 days I think is fine for our purposes to store the logs for. And then current version options is I think how you specify what you want to do with the old Lambda instance once the new one is created and updated. So I think given it is all like for test purposes, we can just say, destroy the old instance. Normally you might not want to do destroy, but for now I think it is fine. So this is our Lambda function that should get created and we all should be good. Now another feature that came to Lambda function recently and also to CDK just in the last couple of days, which is also why I wanted to wait before creating this video, is now with Lambda functions you can have function URLs. So previously if you created an HTTP API for your Lambda function, the only way you can call that HTTP API is you would have had to create an API gateway and configure it so that you can use API gateway to basically as the entry point for a request to your Lambda. But now you can have your Lambda and a function URL which will serve as the entry point for your Lambda. So given that feature is now available in the latest version of CDK also, let's try to test that functionality. So we will call lambda function.add function URL, which will help us do that. And then we have to provide some optional function options. So let's see what they are. The first one is auth type. By default, it is going to be some IAM role. We do not care about any like authentication right now. So for now, we can just say okay, none. And then we also need to specify some cross origin policy. Otherwise, if we call it from our browser, it will basically get blocked, the request. So let's say allowed methods is going to be http method dot get, and then what else do we, I think allowed origins we can just do, which should be a wildcard for all of them, and then max age, let's say duration dot minutes 1, I think. Yeah, should be fine. So this hopefully I think should allow us the function, the URL that gets created to be even invoked from a browser. So with that, I think, so we have our dist, which looks good. What we would now do is run 3 commands. The first one is cdk bootstrap. The next one is called cdk synth. So synth is basically synthesize, which is going to show you, oh, these are the resources that are going to get created. So that is where you can, before actually something being deployed, you can see, oh, is it the right stuff that is going to get created and the right changes that will happen. And then finally, the main command is cdk deploy, which should deploy out, your Lambda function. So with that, let's quickly run cdk bootstrap. And just in case it does not expose some PII info about my AWS account and such, I will just minimize the terminal instance. So meanwhile, let's go back to our AWS UI console, and if I go to Lambda and see, like right now I have a couple of this test function and then this Spotify now playing Lambda, right? But nothing apart from that. But once we run cdk deploy, the expectation would be here I should see my, what are we calling it, hello world Lambda function also, right? So let's go back. I'm just hoping bootstrap ran according to intention. Now let's run cdk deploy, because I think there's no use of synthesize unless you are looking at the output and see, and kind of cross-checking that everything is going to be correctly created. So let's run cdk deploy. It is going to figure out, okay, I need to create a Lambda function. I need to attach some IAM roles, right? So another important thing about AWS resources is for anything to interact with any other thing, you need the proper access through different sort of roles. And by using AWS CDK, it gets taken care of pretty much automatically. So for example, here we said, oh, we want to retain our logs for 3 days. Now, typically you would need to create a separate CloudWatch rule for that and basically have certain permissions so that your Lambda can now, send the logs to CloudWatch and all that can happen. But here, all of that is happening kind of, behind the curtains. And then it says, oh, do you wish to deploy these changes when I ran my cdk deploy command. So actually, yeah, this one is not PII. So let me, yeah. Right, so it's saying, oh, are you confirm? Can you confirm you want to make all these changes? So it is creating some invoke function URL. It is creating some roles. It is creating a log deletion policy. It is creating a service role for a Lambda function. Like it's kind of going to do all this basically. And we can say, okay, yep, this all looks good. It will start publishing, and hopefully in some time, we should have our application up and running. AWS Systems Manager is basically where you can see all these different applications, or what here we are also calling stacks, that are created through CDK in one place. So here, if I see my CloudFormation stacks, there are 4 of them. And as you can already see, so hello world Lambda stack, the status is create in progress, right? So you can already see it has identified, oh, there's this kind of stack that we are in the process of already creating. And in this stack, if you go to resources, you will see, oh, for this stack, we have an IAM role, actually two IAM roles and two Lambda functions. And one IAM role and one function is for something CloudWatch log retention related. So it's something that, CDK created, by itself. We did not have to do anything. But there's this other Lambda function, which is the hello world Lambda function, right? Which should be the, code that we created and we intended to. So if you kind of click on that, we see now, okay, hello world Lambda function is kind of created already. This is the code that is running, and boom. So the environment is, or the runtime is node 14. Handler is index.main. This is the architecture. And then the new AWS, Lambda feature that we are talking about, function URL, right? So this is that automatically generated URL. Boom, hello world, right? So basically now in future, if I ever wanted to update my, the business logic of this function itself, or if I wanted to update my stack or change the log retention policy or anything, like all of that is basically code driven. I can make any of those changes, run my Cdk deploy command again, and that would reflect the changes in my like actual AWS instance. So what this helps to do is, in longer term, this is a lot more maintainable than doing something through the AWS UI itself. And that is pretty much it. Hopefully everyone found it helpful. Please like or leave any feedback if there is any, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.